I think we can start. People are coming. It's great to see many people crazy enough to enjoy listening about figures. So welcome everyone, and without further ado, I give the floor to Riccardo Franco Levi, the president of the Federation of European Publishers, who will welcome you and give a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Enrico. Thank you to you all for being here, book lovers, friends. It's very easy for me to underline the importance that we attach to statistics and to data. And I wish to congratulate both and thank Enrico Turrini for the effort he's making, and all European Publisher Association for the effort they are making in collecting data. Data are indispensable for us to know the market where we live and for approaching institutions with the correct data set. Nothing more from my side, Enrico. It's up to you to give us the whole picture, please.
Thanks, Riccardo. Thank you very much. And indeed, it is an effort, but indeed we think it's very important for us to be able to give as good as possible a picture of the publishing sector in Europe, which once again, I remind you, is the biggest cultural industry in Europe, at least until someone proves the contrary. And so far, it hasn't happened, so we're good. We do make quite a big effort, and actually just a couple of words about who we are so we know where the figures you're about to see come from. We are the Federation of European Publishers. We represent 29 national associations of publishers of books, journals, education materials from all over Europe. You see on the map, it's pretty much everywhere. We have also given our Ukrainian colleagues a special guest status to give them a bit of support. We've been around for more than, well, almost 60 years now. And not me personally, but the Federation, and we represent more than 6,000 individual publishers all over Europe. And among the things we do is to try, with the help of our members, the national associations, plus looking at other sources, to present a picture of the book market in Europe year after year. But again, it is quite a substantial effort, which is why my word of caution whenever I do this data traveling show is don't believe anyone who tells you about book statistics, including me. Just take everything everybody says with a pinch of salt. What I'll tell you is a story that is supported by the data we have, but don't get obsessed with individual figures. We do our best. There's still quite a way to go. So, let's have a look at the main data. What happened to the market in 2023? We noted for the second year in a row a small increase in overall turnover, so net publishing turnover. We are at some 24.4 billion euros in net turnover, which you will notice is about the same level as the peak that the industry reached in 2007, just before the financial crisis, which together probably with other factors generated a period of relative decline and stagnation that only saw us come out of it after the COVID crisis with a huge rebound of turnover in 2021. There was an increase of between 6 and 7%, the highest increase we had seen probably in 20 years. So turnover, net turnover is basically back to the peak level, but in the past 2 years, these small increases are due mainly to an increase in the value of sales driven by prices because inflation has been high, although we will see later book prices do not increase as much as general inflation, whereas sales in volume have gone down in the last couple of years. And especially for this year, and from this year on, I'm going to introduce something that so far has not been pictured in this graph, which is inflation. And because we have to, well, take that into account too. And then the picture is unfortunately a bit different. This is the comparison between the real turnover in the last more or less 20 years, And below, you see when taking into account inflation, so in real terms. Now, mind you, it's a pretty blunt exercise that I've done, that is taking the overall turnover of European publishers and deflating it using the inflation in the EU. So don't take it as the most accurate, but it gives the idea. So turnover is back to where it was at its peak in 2007, but in real terms, maybe, I say maybe, we have a problem. Maybe because anyway, I still see a very healthy, vibrant, dynamic industry. But in terms of revenues, maybe there is some reflection to make. I leave it also to you. Well, you're the publishers, you know better how things are going. We have also done an effort now to, in parallel with net turnover, have also an estimate of the sales of books at cover price. Again, rough estimate. The trend, of course, follows quite closely the one of net turnover, with some differences due mainly to exports. So we're talking about some 32 to 37 billion euro per year. That's so the sales at cover price of books in Europe. So what you don't see there is the exports outside of the EU by European publishers, nor the sales of imported books coming into Europe from outside or self-publishing. So the total market, but beyond European publishers, is probably closer to 36, 39, maybe 40 billion. But so finally, from now on, we will show in parallel the evolution of net turnover and sales at market value. New titles. After a couple of years of decline, in part due to COVID, and a couple of years of stagnations, we see again an increase. So we are back to some 595,000 new titles. The picture behind is mixed. In the major markets, some have seen the number of titles picking up again after a few years. Some haven't. I must say, for example, this is some 10,000 titles, new titles more than last year. But if you don't consider the UK, everyone else would be in total at minus 10,000. So again, mixed picture in the major markets. And the copies sold, actually it's also in 2023. Thing is, unfortunately, we don't have precise data enough to have the trend in the number of copies sold. We'll try to get that in the future. But we're looking again at some 2.5 billion individual books sold, which is quite amazing, if you think about it. Once again, a colleague said that if you stack them all up in vertical, you can reach the moon from the Earth. So a nice ladder to the moon made of books sold in Europe, which is a nice picture if you think about it. The active catalog, of course, keeps increasing. We are looking at 14 million different titles available. So again, if someone says they don't know what to read, tell them think twice, because seriously, you have a hell of a lot of choice. And 3.3 million of these titles are available also in digital or audio version. So there is for every taste, every kind of preference. And of course, this keeps increasing. These are the main markets in terms of sales and in terms of new titles. I wanted to start giving also some dimensions, because not everyone knows exactly about what kind of dimensions we're talking about. So Germany, UK, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands, those are the biggest markets, both in terms of net publishers turnover, which you see the first figure on the left. So with Germany, 6.5, 7 billion, UK, 4.5, 5 billion, France, around 3.5 billion. That's including exports. Because sometimes you could see discrepancies with some reports. This always includes exports. Italy, we're some 2.5 billion. Also Spain, just a bit lower than Italy. And the Netherlands, something close to 1 billion. And then you see also the market value, clearly higher for all these territories. And then new titles. In the lead, always the UK, having a universal language, then Germany, Spain, Italy, France, and Poland. When we look at the turnover broken down by the main categories, so from bottom to top, educational, basically was K-12, scientific, academic. That's, again, only books, not including journals. Trade books and children's books. Well, educational books follow a cycle of their own, depending on national policies. Children's books have shown a lot of resilience especially during the crisis. They reached 15% of all turnover in 2021. There's been a very slight slowdown in the last couple of years, but maybe just because they reached such a peak, especially during COVID, because parents didn't want their children to spend all day in front of a screen. So children book sales picked up quite strongly, but they remain still a very solid segment of publishing. Exports, which showed, of course, a bit of a decline in share during COVID, picked up and remain around 1/5 of all book sales in terms of turnover for European publishers. Again, obviously, especially driven by linguistic areas. This is turnover by distribution channel. And, well, the most important thing, you see the impact that COVID had on sales in bookstores and, in general, physical stores and online. Online sales went from some 23% to close to 29% of all sales, whereas sales in bookstores, which were a bit more than half, went down to around 45%. The trend was confirmed in 2021, and ever since we have noted a decrease in online sales and an increase again in sales in bookstores, which by now we can probably safely say indicates a gradual return by book buyers to bookstores, physical bookstores, which as publishers we appreciate a lot because we believe in the importance of a healthy, diverse network of bookstores, physical bookstores, including independent ones all over Europe, in order to maintain a healthy book sector. Turnover by format. I hope if you're in the field, you're not surprised that print book sales represent more than 80% of turnover. I mean, digital is very important, but in some segments, not, well, overall it is, but it's not, doesn't represent clearly the majority of turnover. E-books probably never realized the promise that some people, or the threat that some people thought they would represent some 10, 15 years ago, whereas audiobooks have been growing extremely fast. We'll see more when we look at some individual country data. Now, one thing about audiobooks, because they went from 2.5% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022, which seems little, but for something that basically did not exist until 5 years ago, and I'm talking digital, obviously, not CDs. That's quite remarkable. We estimated 3.5% for last year, but mind you, we are already a bit losing track because of the lack of data. I'll do my best for next year to look for alternative sources. Already, I think a few weeks ago, the Frankfurt Book Fair published a white book on the audiobook market, and already from that paper, I would say that audiobooks represent at least 5% of total turnover in Europe, and I'll chase the remaining couple of percentage points for next year so that I can officially sanction that it is actually 5 or even 6%. Bonus. This is straight from Eurostat, the European Union Statistical Service. Just a curiosity, this shows the online purchases of, in blue, printed books, magazines or newspapers. And I believe this is mainly books, because I don't think many people buy a paper newspaper online. And in probably gold or orange, up to you, the online purchases of digital books, magazines, and newspapers. There probably you have a lot more digital. Just to show that overall in the EU, probably some 13, 14% of people buy print books, print publications. So still very, very important for e-commerce. And some 6-7% of people buy digital publications, but we have countries where almost up to a quarter of the population buys books, print books online, and even digital publications. And in some countries, such as Denmark or Finland, and this introduces also the fact that the Nordic markets are extremely digitalized. People buy online actually more digital than print publications. Another bonus. Eurostat just a few weeks ago released, finally, we had been waiting for it for I think more than 10 years, the latest data on reading habits. And it's I don't know. I mean, learning that more like 55.5% of men, so shame on us, don't read books at all. I know. At least for women, it's only a little less than 40%. Keep it going and show us how good and important it is to read, because we clearly need it. And well, at least it's good to see that the younger cohorts are the ones that are more likely to read books. So I hope that means there's hope for the future, and not that with age you lose the taste for reading. I haven't, and I hope you don't either. We also have data at national level. No big surprises. Nordics plus Luxembourg, Netherlands, Estonia, Ireland among the big readers. Romania, Cyprus, Bulgaria. There is something that I have to point out, especially because, well, first of all, I'm Italian. Italy is guest of honor. The fact that it seems that in Italy barely a third of the population reads books has raised a lot of perplexity, and I asked my colleagues from the Italian Public Association to have a look. They have strong doubts on the methodology, at least that was applied to Italy. Among one of the elements is that the Eurostat survey takes into account people aged 16 and above. Children are very strong readers. In Italy in particular, children's books are very, very strong. So that already takes away a huge part of the population that reads. There are other reasons why we are in particular doubtful about the figure for Italy, but from national surveys that are being carried out, we know that also the French data are quite underestimated compared. So also in France, there's more than that, more or less 60% of readers. But at least Eurostat has made the effort to come back with a survey. We hope to be able to cooperate with them and improve the methodology, because it's like the level of readership for us is a measure of the health of a society and of a country. Going together with the fact that real turnover has not been at the level of nominal, I'd like to point out that in the last 20 years, if you compare the general level of inflation and the book price index, again taken from Eurostat, prices between 2003 and 2023 overall increased, that means almost 60%. Book prices increased a little less than 35%. So again, if people tell you that books are expensive, tell them, think twice. Books don't keep up with inflation. Is that good? Is that bad? Up to you. Even in 2023, a year of overall quite high inflation, 6.4%, book prices on average in Europe only increased 4.1%. Few minutes to give you an overview of what happened in individual countries, and once again, my appeal for everyone who comes from countries in gray, try and help us put you in the map. Hopefully in green, but anyway, help us put you in the map, because we want everyone to be part of the picture. So once again, this is turnover 2023 compared to 2022. We said more or less 1.6% increase. In most cases, value up, volume down due to inflation, so only a price effect. And we see nothing spectacular. Broadly speaking, a bit of increases, mostly within 5%, or some markets going down, again, not more than 5%. A couple of outliers. Spain has been growing quite strong for the last few years. Well, then you have all sorts of cases, also Iceland, Slovenia, Hungary, Romania, but all in all, a market that is relatively stable and driven mainly by prices. Looking at print book sales, the picture is very similar, but we already see that in the Nordics, growth, if any, is mainly digital, and also in Belgium. By the way, Belgian data are from the French-speaking part only. We see on the side some specific data on e-books and audiobooks. First, for the first time, audiobook market seems to be stagnating in Finland, but there's also a possibility, there's the fact that it's not easy to capture what goes into subscription models, so that probably the money spent in audiobooks still increases, but it's difficult to really pinpoint it. Sales in bookstores, as we say, picking up, possibly. So sales in bookstores growing, more or less, but still, except Sweden, because again, it's digital rather than anything. And on the other side, online sales, in most cases, declining a bit as people go back. But there are a few countries where growth, even at different levels, but it's going on in parallel, both in bookstores and online. Comparing with 2019, I still wish one day to stop talking about the last normal year before COVID. We'll see if you're still around in 5-10 years. I might have stopped doing this. But just to tell you that, again, in nominal terms, turnover in 2023 in every country for which we have data was much or sufficiently higher than in 2019. But once again, we saw in nominal terms and real terms, the picture is a bit different. Looking at print, again, the case of the Nordics, where print sales are lower than they were before COVID. But take a look at audiobook data in about, and that's why I say we're probably not capturing the whole phenomenon. Denmark, almost 100%. Finland, more than 200% higher. Italy, more than 200%. Sweden, plus 44%. Again, probably a lot goes through subscriptions. I am told that Sweden, in particular, is a country extremely fond of subscriptions. A friend of mine keeps telling me that they also have subscriptions for coffee. So you pay a subscription and you get free coffee. So imagine for books, if already it goes for coffee. UK, more than 100%. So clearly, audiobook still is a segment to look at, but it's also even more difficult than others to pin down. Bit of bad news. Sales in bookstores in most countries are not yet back at the level they used to be before COVID. And again, we do dearly hope that they go back to the level of pre-pandemic. And of course, on the other hand, sales of books, of physical books online, which are still much higher than they used to be before COVID. Just a few seconds to see what's happening for the time being. So in 2024, no big news. The trend is more or less the same as in the last 2-3 years. So you see a few markets growing a bit, a few markets going down a bit, but we'll have to wait as usual for Christmas to really get the pulse of the situation. And with this, and only a handful of seconds, I thank you again for your attention. I don't know if that means that we have no time for questions, but I'll be outside in case. Thanks again for coming. See you next year, hopefully with, well, good news and maybe more novelties. And, well, I hope you enjoyed the FEP Data Traveling Show. Thank you very much.